Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the May 8th Dare County Board of Commissioners special meeting we're going to go over our budget. It's a budget workshop, and want to welcome those who have tuned in. We apologize that we're a little late this morning because we had some technical difficulties, and we wanted to get those documents online so those that are viewing the meeting can have copies of those documents. I'd like to start the meeting off with a pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd also like to note this morning we have all of our board present. Commissioner Couch, Commissioner Bateman, the Vice Chairman Overman, myself, Commissioner House, Commissioner Ross, and Commissioner Tobin. We also have our our Finance Director, Mr. Dave Clausen, our County Manager, Bobby Alton, and our Clerk, Cheryl, is with us this morning. So, County Manager, I will turn it over to you.
Sir, thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of just housekeeping items that aren't related to the budget since I've got you all together. Large item pickup had almost been completed when we started. We haven't done Tri-Villages and we haven't done Martins Point. We're prepared to do the Tri-Villages and Martins Point, but there are some limitations, and the limitations are going to require the public to cooperate if we do it. We can't hold the materials because of the COVID virus. We have to do everything mechanically. And if people do not segregate their large items, if they don't sort them the way that we ask them to, then we can't pick them up mechanically. We have to hand sort it. And if they don't, if they do commingle it, then we're going to leave it on the side of the road if we do it. If we leave it on the side of the road, it's going to be ugly. And Danny, you're going to get calls, and you all are going to get calls on why we didn't pick it up. And we didn't pick it up because the people commingled it, and we can't hand move it like we would have to do to sort it ourselves. You can't sort it with the boom truck. So the question is, do we go forward with the large item pickup, message out that it has to be sorted correctly for us to pick it up, and that if it isn't sorted correctly, then we will not pick it up. So then we have to be prepared for all the pushback we're going to get when people don't follow the rules and we don't pick it up and it's left on the side of the road. We're prepared to go whichever direction. I just need a little bit of guidance on what to tell our folks at Public Works.
Bobby, give me an example of what kind of segregation you're talking about.
So if you have your metals need to be in one pile.
Okay.
Steel needs to be in another pile, and so on. If you throw your mattress and all your wood from your deck and your refrigerator, you put it all in a pile, and we got to go out there by hand, sort it out, and then pick it up with the boom truck and put it in the right place. And we can't do that as we are working under the COVID rules. We can't handle, keep our people safe.
All right.
So if they sort it correctly, then we can go in with the boom truck and pick it all up in correct piles and put it where it needs to go. We tell everybody every year to sort it, but I say this from experience because every year people don't sort it. In other years, we just suck it up and pick it up anyway. This isn't one of those years. And so I tell you all this because from experience, that's what happens. And from experience, you all get the calls and we just finally go ahead and pick it up anyway. That's going to be a problem this year.
What kind of messaging can we do, Bobby, to really let folks know it's absolutely imperative?
Doing this now is for people that are listening on TV to hear what we're talking about and hopefully follow those rules. Dorothy and her team will message it as well. And so we'll get it out on all the sources that we have.
What date are we looking at to start, Bobby? What date are we looking to start?
I've had several reporters. I apologize.
What's that?
My mic,
There's no audio for Bobby.
my mic. So let's take a little bit of a recess.
All right, the public couldn't hear the town, county manager. County manager, we're having some technical difficulty with his microphone, so we're gonna pause for a few minutes so that we can, get his microphone, fixed, because he was discussing at the time about our large item pickup. So give us a few minutes, folks, and we will try to get this mic situation for the county manager fixed.
Y'all are still live.
So behave.
Y'all are still live.
We could sing Wally happy birthday.
You can mash your button and it'll go on.
That's right, today is Wally's happy
Let's
birthday.
do that.
Yeah.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Wally. Happy birthday to you. Bless your heart.
I just want y'all to remember one thing, paybacks.
Wouldn't have it any other way.
I always like a good fight.
Start.
Test, 1, 2, 3, 4. Test, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Go.
So we're waiting on the chairman, right?
You might have to hold that thing a little closer. Might have to move it a little closer to you.
How will I know if this is working?
Everybody else is breaking up.
Okay. We good? Are we good then?
Bobby, did you undo it, unmute it?
Yeah.
It's unmuted, so.
You just say when. We ready? Okay, call the meeting back to order. And for those of you who are watching or listening, we apologize for that technical difficulty with the county manager's mic. Bobby, let's start from the beginning, if you will, so that those that are listening understood.
Yeah, we were talking about just some non-budget related items first. One was large item pickup. As I had said, large item pickup has been completed in most of the county, but the Tri-Villages and Martins Point has not been completed yet. We're prepared to do that at the end of the month as planned and put the messaging out. Our issue is that people can't commingle the large items. They have to sort them as outlined in the messaging that we get out. You know, the C and D has to be separate from the other items, the metal has to be separate, those kind of things. In past years, people haven't followed those rules very carefully, and we've had to hand sort the materials in order to pick them up and sort them again. We can't do that this year with the COVID-19 pandemic. We can't put our guys at risk handling all of that debris in that large item, and so people are going to have to sort it, and if they don't sort it, then we're not going to pick it up. The issue becomes, in our past experiences, people have not sorted it as we've asked them to do, and when we leave it on the road anyway, then you all get phone calls and we wind up picking it up anyway. This year isn't one of those years where we can do that, and so if they don't sort it and we leave it on the side of the road, it's not going to get picked up, and then you're going to get the phone calls, and the reason it's not picked up is because the people didn't follow the rules and sort it. And so the question becomes, do we simply not do large item pickup to avoid having that problem with the debris on the road, or do we do it as scheduled, message it however we can with Dorothy and her team to make sure people understand they have to sort it, and then you all have to be prepared for the phone calls you're going to get when it isn't, when somebody doesn't do it and there's a pile left on the road that we didn't pick up.
Bobby, I had asked, and I know you explained to Commissioner Bateman, the difference in metals in one pile and C and D in the other. When are we going to actually start the date? What's the date that we start?
I don't know. It depends on what you tell us. It'll be the end of May.
Okay?
Enough time to have,
And the reason
to
I
get our
asked,
messaging out, yeah.
that's right. The reason I asked that is our public information officer, if we can get flyers out, we can get stuff posted on the internet, our webpage, everywhere under the sun. This is going to be difficult because I know that not only down south, but up here, we have the same issue. So we've got to really do a good job getting that messaging out so that people will at least adhere to that. I know you need an answer from the board with respect to, are we going to let it sit? So, I mean, we need to have some discussion about this if they don't separate. So, Commissioner Count?
I can tell you the pile at Waterfall Park that is already on the side of the road and continues to grow daily. It is not sorted. I don't know that we can avoid going ahead and doing it. I think in the interim, I'm going to suggest, and I'm happy to do this, I will speak with some of the community people up there who can't get the word out, that maybe come back and sort your own stuff that you dropped off there. I think we got a couple of weeks to figure it out and make sure it's done, so we can get it off the side of the road. It is unsightly, unfortunately. Martins Point doesn't want it back in their neighborhood. I understand that. The issue down in Rodanthe and the Tri-Villages is it's right there on the side of the road in front of Glory and everybody. So, but I would suggest the board consider doing it.
Can we put a sign out there like ASAP? Hey, no dumping here, or something to that degree to keep
Well,
them from dumping?
sure, I mean, it's illegal to dump on the side of the road.
I know.
Yes, we need to
Yeah.
tell them, but, you know, people, for whatever reason, believe they can just throw away whatever they want to throw away just by throwing it on the side of the
Right.
road, and that's illegal, actually. So, yeah, we can, I don't know, I mean, we can't go on private property and sign it. I mean, I don't know how we would go on someone else's property and put up a sign, but
Bobby, is the issue not physically being able to pick it up, or is that those items need to be kept separate?
it's both.
It's both.
They need to be kept separate, so they have to be sorted by somebody. And to sort it, when they mix it, you can't sort it with the boom truck. So somebody has to get down there by hand and touch all of that stuff. And then you've got the COVID problems with having to touch stuff that you don't have any idea where it came from or who had it. And,
Gotcha.
and we can't protect our people well enough to do that.
What I was trying to get at, was there anything, any other type of mechanical device that we would do that hand
It's
process better?
not that we have. I don't know if, you know, can we get one? I don't know the answers. My guess is there is not, but.
Gotcha.
A lot of mattresses and bedding and stuff, and it is cumbersome. These boom trucks are not really set up for the mattress sizing and the dimensions of those things.
Well, it's just, you have no dexterity. You grab a big load and you just can't pick up one little thing with it.
Yeah, gotcha.
Anyone else have any comments, concerns?
It's a tough one.
It's a tough one.
yeah.
It's a tough one. We may just have to let it sit until
Sort it.
time passes, until you can sort it. But
Or they sort it.
That could be months, though,
I
right?
know, yeah.
If it sits X amount of days, the virus is gone.
Yeah.
So if you've got, I mean, the longest existing stuff I think is on stainless steel, so.
How long we don't have a clue how long it's been out there. If they
Well,
put it
but I'm
yesterday,
saying if
2
it's
weeks ago.
dumped out there and just sits for whatever that time period is.
Yeah. Until I took mine this morning and dumped it.
The problem is,
That's Bobby's, that's Bobby's problem.
And it's gonna keep,
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
piles
you
breed
it
piles.
keep- yes.
If you see a pile of stuff, then you say, well, I'll just go throw my stuff there, and the
Yeah.
pile breeds a larger pile.
See, I agree with you, Jim. It would have deteriorated, but you don't know what
yeah.
is layered on currently, yeah.
We're prepared to move forward with it and message it and see what happens.
Yeah, see what happens. That's about the only thing we can do.
I'm with Danny, just let everybody get the word out the best we can and pick
Yeah.
up what we can.
Right.
What if it's collected, where does it get taken?
Depends on what
Landfill?
it is.
Well, what I'm saying is if you collect it and then put it somewhere, and then
C&D goes in the
after your
landfill.
10-day period or whatever, then you can sort.
I see what you're saying.
Maybe.
Then we're in control of the pile. It's not on the side of the road.
Right.
Just put an area out at C&D, collect it, then if we have to sort, it's not going to be everything.
What we'll do is, what we can do is we can move forward, we can message it, we can do the best we can, and then we'll see what we have and react to that. But,
That's actually a good
you
idea.
know, if we tell people now we're going to go sort it ourselves, and they're not going to follow the rules. I mean,
Right.
they got to
Right.
take some responsibility.
Okay.
Okay. We're
Does
gonna,
that give you some guidance?
yeah, hearing no objections, then we're going to move forward with that. All right. Again, the second unrelated thing is we've had a number of things that have come up grant-wise with CARE money and FEMA money and transportation money and so on. And those grants have short deadlines and they don't hit on our meeting dates. And generally, before we apply for a grant, we would come to you all and say, we're going to apply for this grant and talk about it and we'd move on. But I need to be able to ask our folks to move on any of these grants that we get. If we're successful in the grant, I'll bring the grant back to you all to approve before we accept the money to make sure you're comfortable with the conditions. But if I have to wait until a board meeting to apply, I'm going to miss some deadlines. So I need ability to go ahead and let staff apply for grants as they come due and then bring them to you all.
So move.
Yeah, do you need a vote or a consensus? Okay. Well, the vice chairman's just made that motion. Is there a
Yeah,
second?
I'll second that as long as it's, like I said, the grants are in conclusion or concurrence with the CARES Act.
Yeah.
Well, no, there's more than just that.
There's more than
Oh,
that.
there's more than that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'll go ahead with the whole program.
Is that a second?
Yeah.
Okay. Any discussion concerning it?
Bobby,
Commissioner?
is there any reason that you can think of that we should not? Because I'm inclined, obviously, to go along with you on this and do this. So I'm trying to think, what could be a possible reason not to
Well,
do so?
In grants where there's no county match, then there's really not much reason to bring them back to you at all. And
Right.
Frankly,
Yeah.
in those, we either get the money or we don't.
Right.
If it's a grant we can't manage because reporting requirements are too bad and all that, then Dave would tell us that before we ever got that deep in it. Where there is a county match, then obviously that's a budget issue. We got to have budget for it, and we want you to know about it so that, you know, if we don't have budget, we know that next year, if we get this grant, we got to get it in the budget or be able to tell you we've got funds in whatever department it's in to cover that match. And so that's why we bring them back to you. So, yeah, other than that, there's no reason why you would be in it at all other than just to know.
Okay. All right.
Yep, got it?
Okay.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimous.
All right, so now let's talk a little bit about budget. First, I'll just talk about the proposed budget schedule. It's getting a little bit different than what we had earlier anticipated. We had planned to present the budget on May 18th, have the public hearing on the budget on June the 1st, and then allow you all to adopt it on June the 1st as well. The legislature, with the legislation that they passed that became law on Monday, put some new rules in with regard to remote meetings because there weren't any rules and everybody was kind of scrambling to figure out how to do remote things. One of the things they did is in items that you all approve that require a public hearing, people have the right to, you know, give us public comment by email. We were already doing that, but what they did differently is they said that not only can they give public comment by email up to and through the time of your board meeting, but they can give email public comment for 24 hours after the meeting, which then means it takes 2 meetings to pass something that requires a public hearing because you got to wait for the 24 hours to expire. And so that changes our schedule a little bit. What it would mean is we would, again, present it on the 8th, and we would have the public hearing presumably on the 1st. Or I guess we could have a special meeting and have the public hearing sooner than that, but presumably on the 1st. Right, and then, you know, that would be more than 10 days. Anyway, we have the public hearing on the 1st, and then the question is, do we just wait until the 15th to adopt, or do you have a special meeting in between after 24 hours to adopt? From our perspective, we just wait until the second meeting in June, have the public hearing the first meeting, and then you adopt on the second meeting, you still have 2 weeks left in June. If something crazy came up, then, you know, we could deal with it. But, so that would be our intended schedule unless you all think differently.
Bobby, if something comes up and after the 15th of June meeting, when we would ostensibly get everything approved and whatnot, if something did come up, do you then have to have another public meeting? Do you have to do that again?
Once you adopt the budget can always be amended. You can't change the tax rate, but you can change your spending
Right.
and things during the year. So if something came up, we could go back and amend the budget to solve whatever problem that was.
Gotcha, okay.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we go ahead and follow that schedule as outlined. I
Okay.
think that's
A second.
the correct way to go.
Commissioner Couch moved with that schedule, and Commissioner Bateman seconded. Is anybody further discussion concerning it?
I think there'd be less confusion than doing a special meeting, because that would just cause more confusion in the whole situation. So I think that's the best way to go.
Okay. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimous.
Okay, I'm going to do a little summary of what we've done first, just to give you an outline, and then we'll go through these documents in as much detail as you'd like that sort of follow this summary I'm about to give you. As we've worked through this, you know, we started our budget year, it was a normal budget year, and we asked the department heads to give us our budget projections and do all those things. And then the COVID pandemic started, and it became evident that what we thought we were going to be able to do, we weren't going to be able to do, and we had to start again, and so we did. And so Dave went back and started looking at revenue projections, and he took information that the League of Municipalities had out. He took economic information from Wells Fargo that does a lot of our economic forecasting for us. The Dare County Tourism Board went through and looked at tourism numbers to talk about occupancy taxes and those kinds of things. Our past experience when we've had downturns. We also get reports from the state on the state sales tax revenues and those kind of things. And Dave sort of took all of those things and came up with what we believe were our worst case projections going into 2021 budget. And so that's what we used to try to create a budget that we're about to talk to you about. We don't know if we're right or we're wrong. We're doing the best guess we can from the information that we have. What Dave and I have talked about is if we're wrong and you know, the COVID doesn't impact us as severely as we thought, and our revenue numbers are up and those kind of things at mid-year or late fall, we can always come back and say some of the things that we had to postpone or not do, look at doing them because the revenue was better than we projected. Similarly, if it's worse than what we projected, then we always look at things in November-ish, December-ish to be sure that the revenue's coming in like we anticipated, because if it is not, it gives us 6 months to slow the spending down, to stop things that we've asked to do, change what we're doing, whatever we need to do to make sure that our expenditures meet our revenue reality. And if that occurred, then we would go back into the budget in that time and cut. So we can do either one. Or if we find things are right on the dot, then we keep doing what we're doing. So that's sort of the plan with what we've got here. I think I've talked to you all before. I'm not sure if we did it in a meeting or I talked individually, but some of the things that we held to and assumptions that we made to do this budget is, one is we did a revenue neutral rate, and that is the rate that would allow us to have essentially the same revenue we had last year. So in any other year, it'd mean no tax increase. We had a reval year this year, so we're using a rate that, again, generates not 1 cent more revenue this year than we had last year. I'll talk to you about it again in a minute, but that rate is 40.5 cents, so it's a 6.5 cent rate decrease from the current rate. Gets us to revenue neutral. We also held that we had to have a 21% fund balance. That's our policy number. I think it's 18 to 22% or something like that, but 21%, we needed to be sure that whatever we did with the budget, we maintained that 21% unassigned fund balance. Those dollars are the dollars that we have available to solve problems like we have right now. That's why we have a fund balance. That's the rainy day fund and boys it raining right now. So that we wanted to be sure we kept that in reserve as well. We did not want to reduce services to the county. With all that's going on, the services that we provide are very important, maybe more important now than ever. And so we wanted to be sure that our service levels remain the same. And we wanted to be sure that we maintain spending levels at our 2020 levels or less. So we didn't want to increase our spending any this year. And so we put all that into the equations and the things as we were working through the budget. Again, I just told you, that's essentially a flat budget. We used a flat budget projection, and flat means it didn't increase, maybe it decreased some. We also, to do that, had to do some things, and we'll talk about that, but we postponed almost all the capital outlay. We didn't buy any new cars, any new garbage trucks, any new ambulances. We did do garbage trucks. We're not doing ambulances. A lot of those capital outlay things, equipment, backhoes, loaders, those sorts of things that were needed or asked for, we're going to use the ones we've got for another year and postpone those kinds of things. I talked about the department heads and having to change. They gave us their budget request, and there was about almost $3.4 million in new requests. So if things had been normal, the departments needed $3.4 million more in 2021 than we had in 2020. When the COVID-19 virus hit, we recognized that was going to be problematic, and we went back to the department heads and said, hey, come back to us with, again, a flat budget. Your spending levels can't exceed and should be either the same or less than our 2020 levels. And they all did that. And from that, we cut those budget requests from 3.389, we cut it down to 3.4 million. So we actually cut all their requests plus some more in the second round, which was good. With that said, what we're going to look at in a minute is a proposed FY 21 general fund budget of $107,000 and some change. That's about $1.6 million less than the current fiscal year 20 budget, and that which was about $108,700. So we've not only cut the request, but we've cut the actual spending in the budget by over $1.5 million. Good work by our department heads to recognize where we were and help us do that, and good work by Dave and Sally and Dave's staff helping get through that so we could find ways to do that and still try to maintain our service levels. I went through the proposed budget with every department head. I called every one of them, told them what we were going to be proposing today, told them what it meant to their budget. I was trying to be sure there wasn't a gotcha or a, oh my God moment in there where they say, oh, if you do that, I'm going to have this problem, and what are we going to do? And I didn't have any of those. The department heads had sent them in. They recognized what that was going to mean, and they get it, that they're going to run their departments on the funds as we project them here, and we don't anticipate problems there in the next year. So that's good news from our department heads. Just some information, the projected revenue loss we're at is about $4.3 million, and we're covering that projected revenue loss by budget reductions of $1.6 million. Another $1.9 million is a reduction in our contribution from the general fund to the capital improvement fund. And then we took from the unassigned fund balance $707,000, which was the excess above the 21% that we held. So we had more money than 21%, so we used that to cover some of that projected shortfall. Again, by taking money out of the capital improvement fund, obviously that means you can't do as many capital improvements as you anticipated, and so those things we moved to later years in the capital improvement fund. However, the projects that were under contract are not affected. So we have 3 under contract: the COA project, the Health and Human Services project, and the Animal Shelter project. They're still on board and still funded. We have no employee COLAs, no merit pay or no bonuses included in the proposed fiscal year 21 budget. And those are some things that we can revisit at mid-year if revenues allow us to look at those things. We'll just have to wait and see what happens over the next 6 months or so with the virus and what impact it has on county revenues. School funding was not increased. Typically, we use our school funding formula that has worked well for us over time. That was not increased this year. We talked with the superintendent and their finance director about that, explained what was going on. They understood that. We talked to them about their capital projects, and because we weren't funding a lot of things in the capital improvement plans and put them off, we put off some of the school capital projects. They had one project, a school roofing project, I think at Manteo High School. It was about $1 million that couldn't be postponed. They were having leaks and problems and things that had to be done. And so we kept that in the plan, but we added it to some of the financing that we're doing with the other projects, and it solved some cash flow issues to keep the capital improvement fund at the coverage levels that we think are safe, and also allowed them to go forward with that project. So we took care of that as well. Again, on all of these things, we've talked with the superintendent, we've talked with the finance director, and we've talked with their facilities maintenance director, and they're all on board and they all get it. And so as far as I know, we don't have any issues there. We've worked through any issues we've had with the school. We funded COA the way we would normally fund COA, and I talked with, at the 2020 levels, their operations, and I talked with the president yesterday and told him that was what we were doing, and he was good with that as well. So COA is good too. And so that's sort of, in a nutshell, what all this other information tells you. That's what we've done. That's how we've got there. And the last document you have is sort of the proposed budget. I'm not going to go through that line by line. That would take us the rest of the day. But that proposed budget was done based on the things that I just outlined for you.
Bobby, excuse me.
Sure.
Just a question on this summary, and it shows up again on the revenue assumptions. The neutral rate is showing on here is 40.05 cents. Should it be 40.50 cents?
No.
So it's actually a 6.9, almost a 7 cents
Correct.
reduction
correct.
then. Okay, just want to be sure about that.
Yep.
Perfect.
Almost a 7-cent reduction in the
Yeah.
tax rate from the current tax rate.
Right, super.
Correct.
Let me ask you one quick question before you move on. Can you give me just a quick summary of the different points that were taken into consideration? The 4.3 million that we say is the projected revenue loss from COVID-19. What are those projections?
We're getting ready. That's the next.
Is that the next step?
Page.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. Okay.
And we can, Bobby, do a deeper dive on the capital detail when we get to this spreadsheet, as far as the reduction to the CIF fund transfer in, the Manteo roof replacement. I wanted to just talk some more about those two.
So as we go forward, Mr. Chairman, the next sheet we're going to look at is the revenue assumptions, and you have that. And then behind that is the department request summary, and there's a lot of information on there, but there's really 2 line items that make a difference, and those are the last 2 blue lines, and one is the 2021, it's called revised requested. That's what the department heads sent in to me the second time I asked for it on that blue column. And then the the blue column on the far right is what I approved, and they're not all the same. Some didn't get everything they wanted, even on their second request, and we'll run through those in a minute. And then the last place where we got money was from the capital improvement plan, and that's the next to the last handout you have, and that shows you what we moved and how we moved it to generate the revenue that we needed to balance the budget there as well. And we'll go through that. We'll go through all these as deeply as you all want to go. So, the first.
I've only got one question before we move forward. On the no employee COLAs, merit raises, or bonuses, I understand bonuses, that should be definitely out of the question. But for COLAs and merit pay, I know we're trying to be revenue neutral with what we did last year. And like you said, in end of this year, we'll look at where we stand. I would like to definitely have that as a top priority if we do seem to get more in there, because our staff has gone above and beyond, way above and beyond throughout this whole thing. And I just think that we should look out for them as best we can.
Right.
So I wanted to make that very clear. That's, in my opinion, should be the top priority.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so I'm going to hit the highlights of the revenue assumptions, and as you all decide to dive deeper, then I'll turn it over to Dave, because he's got the computer with all the breakouts that can give you as much data as you need beyond what's there. I talked to you about what we used, to make the revenue assumptions. We're holding the sanitation fund revenue neutral as well. The general fund revenue, we're holding revenue neutral as well. We changed the collection. Our collection rates on our ad valorem taxes are usually in the 99 and some change percentages, and we reduced it down to 98.5, just anticipating some slowness or timing or whatever in people paying their ad valorem taxes, and also some potential legislation that would authorize them to pay them later than they normally would too, to try to help people who are in trouble out. So we anticipate the collection rate to be down a little bit, and so Dave used about a 1% difference from our normal rate there. On your sheet, you've got, the sales tax by quarter, and you can read that. I don't need to read those to you, but those percentages are the assumptions that we used for those. I know that Commissioner Ross had asked some questions about translating those percentages into numbers, and I think.
Actually, I was back up on the property taxes.
Sure.
The current year collection rate, which I fully understand, reduced by 1%, which I also understand. Dave, do we know about what that would be equal to? I'm guessing roughly $500,000 per percent. Okay.
Okay. Good?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so, again, the sales taxes, he took those percentages, and he used the League of Municipalities projections, the Wells Fargo Economic Group reports, and his other economic data to make those projections. And so when we start taking those projections and plugging them into revenue, those are the percentage changes that we had there as well.
If I may also on that, guys, if you look at Q3 calendar year 2020, that would be the first, second, third column there, or the first quarter of fiscal 2021, A39 and 42 are down 10% in our assumptions, and A40 is down 9% in our assumptions. Obviously, those could be absolutely right, so I don't know. None of us do. But I looked at that and thought, if there was a high-risk quarter, that would be the one. So I just chatted with Dave, and he helped me figure it out. If we increased each of those reductions to a minus 30% or even minus 40% in that critical Q3 calendar year 20, it would equate to about $1 million to $1.2 million additional reduction of revenue. I just wanted to quantify for us if things really didn't recover or were remaining slow in occupancy or sales, what would the dollar impact be to us as a county? So roughly $1 million to $1.2 million if it was really bad versus what we're looking at. Thank you.
When we go down and look at the occupancy tax, Dave talked with the tourism board. The tourism board did several scenarios, and this is the worst-case scenario. I believe this was their worst-case projection, and we just took that to be conservative to make sure. And this is one that they're using for their budget as well. And so we used that and assumed our occupancy tax for those months would change by the percentages that you see on that. And when we calculated our revenues, that's what we used to calculate those. We also took into account that, it's possible that building permits will be down, the revenue stamps and registered deeds are down. We said ABC profits might be down, but I read somewhere where the ABC profits are up. So
They are.
So maybe that'll be a plus for us.
Yeah, I don't know how in the world they could be down because they haven't closed, but.
Yeah.
I mean, I've gotten word from their board, they're up about 600,000.
Well, we were thinking about the bars.
It's more looking back at what's gonna happen with the recession that's coming after this. And looking back at what
Right.
happened in 2008, 9, and 10 with recessionary effects.
Oh,
Do we-
okay.
Do we,
Like for the rest of the year after that first quarter.
I got you.
regarding occupancy tax, do we see any impact on beach nourishment projections and
We've run those and a couple of times in a couple of scenarios. Right now, we think we're good for the projects we have upcoming.
Using these numbers, it's still good with the projects you have committed in the years you have committed.
Okay.
The issue's going to be new projects.
New projects.
Because the impact's going to be on the excess, if you will. If those numbers come down, then those numbers go into the excess, and that excess will change.
And it'll depend on the bidding, like Buxton, they're doing the permits to bid that for either a 21 project or a 22 project. The bids normally go like they do, it'll be a 22 project, but the model assumes 21. And that, every time that happens, that's an improvement.
Right.
What the model shows.
But then in these times, we don't know what the bids are going to be. So there are a lot of unknowns, but right now, we believe that whatever we've committed to, we can continue to do. And the real question is going to be, can we do any new projects?
given what's going on, would the anticipation be that the bids could potentially be lower than what we would normally anticipate?
I have no way to know.
It's possible fuel's a big component of their cost.
Right. Well, they buy that futures anyway, don't they?
Well, fuel and demand, it depends on how many other projects are out there at the time. We get a hurricane and it changes all the bids because everybody's going to be doing nourishment, so.
Right. Okay, thank you, Bob.
I have a question about the occupancy tax thing. Do we know how the tourism board came up with their assumptions, what they based their assumptions off of?
I know their staff did it, and then Diane told me they have a finance committee or a budget committee.
They do have.
Yes.
Reviewed these with that committee.
It was
And
very
these numbers
conservative.
are if we don't have a storm.
Well, yes, I mean, if we have a hurricane, then everything changes again.
Whole ball game play changes.
Yeah. Two items, if I could quickly. I should have asked this earlier, Dave. As I look at that occupancy tax reduction in April and May, I presume they're pretty knowledgeable in April since we're out of April and they would pretty much know how much occupancy, which was virtually zero.
Budget finance.
In May, 85%. Do we know year on year the dollar impact of those 2 months? I probably should, again, I should have asked you earlier when we were chatting. I apologize.
It's significant.
Yeah, I'm trying to get a
Vacation
feel
rentals,
for
I know
it.
it is in Hatters. Just the probably per company down there could be just the fact that we're opening up on the 16th, a week before Memorial Day, that could be anywhere from 100,000 to 200,000 in revenue that week for these companies. So Would you agree with that, Dave, that it's a significant number?
I'm assuming it's a couple 100,000
April, well,
in May.
April, just for our revenue, we basically get 1% of the total. But April's 3.5% of what comes in the year. And on average, average for the last 5 years, that's 167,000. And then May is 6.8% of the total.
0.4.
And that's 350,000.
400,000. So in essence, those 2 months are worth about
$500,000.
Yeah, $500,000 to us as a county, and that's helpful. And my other comment, I want to correct what I had said about the sales tax. My comment included a downside on occupancy. In other words, if July and August, as these guys have calculated at minus 30% and 20%, which again, I'm not challenging, could well be correct, but if things were much worse and were minus 50%, minus 50% in occupancy tax, that combined with the sales tax is where the $1 million to $1.2 million was derived in my comment. So it was a combination of sales and occupancy tax downsides. So again, it helps bracket, I kind of like to use the phrase, how bad is bad? And that helps, I think, give a feel for how much actual dollars are involved. So thank you, appreciate it.
And then the other thing, it's not going to be a huge dollar impact, but that 85% for May, this was done before there was an opening date. And so I think that assumed that we lost all of May or we went to Memorial Day, or so I don't know which date they used, but since we're opening probably earlier than they anticipated, that'll change a little, that would change a
Gain a little bit.
to our favor.
Bob, is that something that Willow's going to have kind of fingers on the pulse on as far as what's going on with real estate rentals and that sort of thing? That's something she could.
A little bit easier because we're only like 30 days out.
Yep.
We'll know what April was the 1st of June, the first day of June.
So we monitor that by the revenue. We know 30 days after the month that we made X, and we can tell our trends over time
Gotcha.
without.
Well, that's not, in the scheme of things, that's not long. I was just wondering if maybe we could have her give us a heads up on kind of what to expect as we went along, but I guess 4 weeks is not too awful bad.
By the time we're talking about looking at this in November, we'll have a trend line easily by then. And we'll have been through most of the summer season, and so we'll kind of have an idea where we are.
Right.
The last thing on that list of other things, Dan, is interest income. The interest rates are down to next to nothing, and so our interest income on, the funds that we carry is going to be lower going in next year. We've got a same or increase line. The ABC profits go into a social services restricted fund, and we anticipate no change there. And then the lottery money in the capital investment fund, we anticipate about a $50,000 increase there. Dave, you can.
Well, that's just because we've built up balances and purposely not drawn them all out.
So that's how we got to the revenue numbers that I outlined to you a minute ago, and how we got, your revenue determines your budget, and that's how we wound up with the $107 million budget that we talked about a second ago.
Sure. Bob?
Yeah, I was just going to say, thanks, guys. This is very, very helpful, very clear. I think helps guide us through the process, and I think it was very well thought out, so thank you for that.
Bobby, in reference to what Jim was talking, the tourism board, I'm on the steering committee in budget and finance, and that was worst case scenario, what they came up with there.
Right. Well, and that's what we should be using because.
Yeah. Oh, I agree.
We just don't know. Yeah. And again, hopefully it's better, and if it is better, then we'll adjust. All right. The second sheet in your deck there is it's called a department change request summary, and I don't know how deep a dive you want to go into this, but I'm going to go across the top and just tell you what all that means, and then you tell me how you want to go from there. As you go across the top, the first line says 2020 original budget, and that's what basically last year's budget was. And we put that in just so you have some frame of reference as to what the other numbers mean going forward. The next line is a blue line. It's the 2021 original request. Those were the requests that came in February. This is what the department head said they wanted and needed for the next year. And this was before we knew about and knew what the impacts of the COVID-19 were going to be. That would have been a normal budget year. That's how we would have handled that. And that's at $3-something million in new requests. And then the next line is a white column. That's the difference between 2020 and the 2021 requests. You get to the next blue line, and that's the 2021 revised requests. And that's when we knew about the COVID, and we said, we got to go back to the drawing board staff, come back to me with a flat or better budget. And so that blue line, as you go through those columns with each department, is what came back to us from the departments. And as you get to the next column, that's the difference between the cuts between each year. The important thing, and the budget number, is the next blue line, and that's the 2021 manager. And what that is that's what, when Dave and I went through all this is what I'm told the department heads I could approve going forward. And for the most part, they line up with the 2021 revised requested. As you go through, if you wanted to go through department line by line, what you would find is we had Ernie go through and do budget analysis, and our fuel numbers are different than we ran every department's fuel numbers on our own and put those in, and they are different in many cases than what the departments estimated on their own. Same thing with some supply lines and some things like that. They're not large dollars, but they're different. The large dollar differences in there are where we took out the capital outlay, where we didn't buy any more sheriff's cars in this budget. So there's a big number in the sheriff's budget that we reduced. We didn't buy some ambulances, and so those numbers are changed. And so as you go through, those are the big numbers. In public works, there's a number of capital outlay things that we didn't do, some repairs and also some equipment needs and those kind of things that we took out of their budgets as well. But for the most part, every department was funded at the level that their second COVID, if you will, related request was. And each of the departments have said that they can manage on that budget. I don't know if you want me to go through this, Mr. Chairman, department by department, or you've got the gross numbers are in the budget that we talked about. But if you do, I'm glad to go through it. Or if anybody has something in a particular department, we're glad to talk about that. You tell me how you'd like me to do it.
I don't know that that's necessary unless somebody's got any specific, we've had a chance to look at it, unless there's some specifics anybody wants to address.
I just have one general question. Is there have we instituted a hiring freeze? I notice there's positions in here that they asked for that they didn't get, but it's a difficult question, I know.
No, even in the current budget, today's budget, we have said essential personnel only. So if you can get by without it, don't hire it. If we can wait, wait. If we can't run, if we need a paramedic and we can't run the shift without it, then hire it. So, but in the budget where someone has wanted to create a custodian position in one of the departments, a full-time custodian, which was a brand-new position, we did not fund any new positions in the budget.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else got any questions in reference to a specific department?
I just had one on the general election adjustments. First page near the top there, second group, the elections group. It's a reduction of $160,000 year on year.
There's no municipal elections, or I think no primary.
Yeah.
Yeah, primary.
It's every 2 years it'll flip back and forth.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I just wanted to clarify, make sure. Yeah, makes sense.
And I'll just tell you now, the Board of Elections has proposed this budget and approved it, and they're good with it. But the caveat is no one knows what COVID-19 impacts there were going to be come November.
Yes.
You know, what kind of staff do we have to have? What do we got to do in our buildings? What kind of barriers do we have to put up? We don't really
It's
know
subject
yet
to change.
how all that's going to go. So there may be something that changes there that we have to do in order to have the election, and we'll just have to deal with that as we go forward. But, yeah, Dave just told me all that's grant eligible, so it won't come out of our budget, so good for us. Anyway, so that could change, but at least there's revenue for it.
Bobby, just a question too. On the summary sheet, it had proposed general budget 107,076,589, 1,659,530 less than FY20 general budget. And then how does that reconcile against?
It doesn't reconcile with this, because this is just requests and change requests and all that. It isn't the total budget. So it doesn't, that and this doesn't reconcile, but it does reconcile with the budget that you have here. When you look at the revenue line in this budget, it'll say 107 million whatever dollars, and when,
It does with department revenues that we have them turn in, but all the stuff that I do and change revenue wires is not on this sheet.
yeah, but when you look at that 3.8 on the total on the last page of this sheet you're looking at, that won't line up with, you can't add that up and come up with the budget number, because it's, not everything's in it.
3.8.
But if you go to the last page
Yeah.
and you look at the columns across the bottom with the sums of those lines, they're just the sums of the changes, not the sum of the budget.
Okay.
Bobby and Dave, on this budget workshop summary, if we go down to the sixth bullet, department heads were asked to submit, okay, I just want to kind of put this in context. Represented a almost 3.4 increase. So by going back through and sharpening the pencil, not only was that 3.4 eliminated, we also cut another 3.4 million. So we're looking at a.
No,
No,
no, Danny.
no.
They cut out 3.3, which was the original request, plus whatever the difference in those two are. I had that somewhere, I thought. Is that 1.9? No. Whatever the difference in 3.4 and 3.3 is. So we basically were able to not only reduce their request, we were also able to reduce the base 20 budget by about $100,000 or so.
Okay, all right. I'm clear. I just wanted to make sure I was reading that right. Thank you.
Bobby, on page 3 of the spreadsheet, it's just a clarification question. About halfway down the page, in social services, we have the Medicaid transportation change request. And it shows a reduction of 120,000 from the 2021 original requested. I didn't quite know what that was. I don't know, David.
Their request assumed the big statewide change that Trillium talked about that we would have to comply with that's been delayed.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board on that summary?
And there's only really a couple of new, I found 3 really new things. There's one capital outlay for information technology. There's changes to the security system for the courthouse. And I think it was $11,000 for library materials. That's it.
Gotcha. Okay, Bobby.
Okay. Next, you have this long, big spreadsheet that goes the long way. That's the capital investment fund sheet. And it's probably going to be easier for me to let Dave just sort of walk you through that. And then if you have questions, we'll go from there.
The important thing is at the bottom of the second page, the 11 by 17 page, and it shows by year with this plan how much debt service would be each year, what projected ending fund balance the capital improvements fund would be each year, and what that fund balance is as a percentage of that annual debt service. So the policy we talked to you about Monday was a minimum of 0.33 times and a target of 0.5. And that's basically where we ended up with, except for the really crunch year of 2021. Hopefully, it'll be better than that. I assume land transfer tax at a 35% decrease because that's what's happened the last 3 recessions. It's about a 5 to 6 times. If you take the change in, I think it was gross domestic product, it was consistent, 5 to 6 times whatever that number was. And I hope that's a pessimistic, horrible, assumption. But what I did was in 2021, what can we do to still keep that 0.33 number? 2022 it worked out where it's about 75% of what we would normally do. And
Excuse me.
every number is almost that same amount. And then 23 is back to what we've normally done the last few years. We talked to the schools, and back on the first page and going down, in 2021, $150,000 for their capital outlay, and I think it was like $100,000 for technology refresh, which was their replacing and new computers, and $50,000 for their building program. Then on their capital improvements plan in 21, $145,000, and that's a chiller at, I think it's Nags Head Elementary School that Russ said really needs to be done. The county capital outlay is $22,000, and that's information technology. I think it's intrusion software. Then the county capital improvements plan, the only 2 items in there are 2 things that facilities or public works says we really have to do these 2 things. And one is to rework the trash chute at the transfer station, about $200,000 of work. And then we found out that the county owns, there's a sewer lift station across the street at COA, and we just found out, and the town of Manteo was right, that the county owns that sewer lift station. And William Nash, who oversees that, says it's just about ready to fall apart. So he says we've got to do that project. We didn't change anything in the roof replacements and the heating and air conditioning because in 21 and 22 we didn't have much scheduled. We only had like HVAC replacements at the Dare Center, Wilkinson building, and the Fezenden Center, and no roofs until 2023, so that didn't change. No change in, we included a section on major equipment replacement, and there's no change in that. The first thing coming is EMS mobile data computers all the way out in 24. We did change, EMS had asked for a reserve for major maintenance or things that could go wrong with the helicopter, and we plan to do $100,000 in this year, $100,000 next year. I believe it was $200,000 in 22, and it doesn't work. We'll have to take our chance that if something big happens, we'll have to hit fund balance. So it's 0 in 20, 0 in 21, and $100,000 in 22. As Bobby said, we got no change in the planned bond issuance. Well, one change in the planned bond issuance for this fall, which was we'd had the EMS equipment, the property in Buxton that was purchased, the property in Manteo that was purchased, the animal shelter, Health and Human Services, and COA. As Bobby said, one thing in the school capital improvement plan was replacement of a 1988 section of roof at Manio High School and a 1998 section of roof at Manio High School that hadn't been touched since those dates. And they said it's to the point that they even stopped a basketball game to mop up water. And Russ said, we really, if you can find a way to do it, do it. If you add this $1 million into this debt issue over 19 years of principal, it's $53,000 a year of principal. I've talked to Doug Carter and Joe at the State Treasurer's office. We can do, what really makes it work is we can do 1 year of interest only, so we'll have a 20-year bond issue. The first year is going to be interest, and then all that principal is still amortized. It ends at 20. It's just amortized over 19 years instead of 20. That's what makes 2021 and 2022 work. Other than that, we start over. Then the other issues, we had planned EMS for 2022. We get coverage issues in 22 and 25. So we moved the 22 back 1 year to 2023, and Public Works was 24, and we moved that back to 25. What I'm recommending is you look at this as an interim plan, because really what we did in 21 and 22 is what can we get in that will work as a minimum. And as things change, and the great thing about this is it took me about a week, and before we had all this model and stuff, that would have been 2 or 3 weeks. So it's a relatively quick thing to revise it. And the same's true with Beach Nourishment. They've done the model so that the model looks exactly like this one, and it's become a day instead of a week's worth of work. So we can quickly go back and revise.
Questions?
I got a question on the go ahead. Let me go.
Go ahead, I'll get mine in.
And this is the helicopter on the maintenance. Did they ever get that vibration taken care of in that?
It will be taken care of after this season. They have a plan. It's been down there. Remember, the vibration problem is a nuisance and a long-term maintenance issue. It's not a safety issue, so the
Okay.
helicopter's still flying and still using. They've come up with a way, they think, to resolve that. When we were scheduling to get it done, we didn't want to take the helicopter out of service during the summer because it'll take them a while to do it. And so we asked them to wait and do it in the downtime after the season's over, and they agreed to do that. And in the meantime, it's still warranted and all those kind of things. And so we're waiting for the season to end so they can take it down to Texas and get that taken care of.
Thanks.
I know that's been ongoing. Do they have a light at the end of the tunnel thinking that they can fix that vibration issue?
They do. They've done several things. My engineering skills are limited, but they first did some things with, I think they're called attenuators. They're, when you have vibration, that's a frequency, and you can put, like noise canceling headphones, you can put an attenuator thing, and if you put them in the right places, it counteracts that frequency and it does away with that vibration. And so the first step was to try to do that. They did some of that on ours. It improved it some, but there is a number, I don't remember what it is, that we agreed to get it to, and it didn't get it to that number. The second thing that they've done is they've replaced the rotor from a 4-bladed rotor, I think, to a 5-bladed rotor, and that's supposedly going to help some. And then there's a couple more things they're going to do after the season, and they believe with all that together, it'll get us to that number that they agreed on. When we first had the problem, we all agreed that the warranty continued until, I think, 6 months after they got it to whatever that number was. And so that's where we are.
Safety-wise, is there,
No,
do we need to be concerned about that?
no, and we've asked that question from top to bottom, not just from them, but from our pilots and from everyone else.
Yeah.
On a long flight, if you ride a motorcycle a long time and your feet get kind of fuzzy from the vibration, it's kind of like that. But it's not unsafe. And the other thing we're concerned about is that vibration. We've got tons of electronics and equipment on there, and over time, it makes the wear on that longer and the useful life shorter than it normally would be. And so
Long-term maintenance.
we don't want to have those increased costs. We want to get that vibration out so it doesn't, one, make it uncomfortable on long flights, and two, doesn't decrease the life of all the electronic equipment that we have on the helicopter.
And also, if I'm not mistaken too, since it is a new aircraft, and not saying just brand-new aircraft, it's a completely brand-new aircraft, this type of situation had to be approved. Their calculations to fix that also had to be approved by FAA, which took a little bit of time too, so.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Ross, you had a question?
Yes. Thank you, Bobby. At the bottom of the second page, it explains our annual debt service, Dave, of $15,760,000 and the ending fund balance and the coverage. Could you walk us through sort of the June 30th of this year capital investment fund ending balance, then the ins and outs that will then result in the 5032 balance? And I'm just looking for round numbers because I know we'll be transferring money in from the general fund. Obviously, we will be issuing the bonds. We will then spend the bonds, and there's land transfer tax coming in, and that will end up with $5,032,000. I was just trying to visualize the ins and outs from this year's ending balance to get to that 5032.
Okay, so.
And again, round numbers are fine. I'm not trying
Screen's not big
to.
enough, I'm sorry.
Let me, while he's doing that, let me
Sure.
just tell you a couple things to give you some perspective.
Yes, sir.
You look at those coverage numbers and just look at 21, it's 0.32. That's a 0.1% difference than our 33 minimum. So that's
That's the minimus.
not a
I'm
problem, but that's our problem area, if you will. And
No,
we-
I don't view that as a problem
But,
area.
and that was what I was going to say. That number means that we have a fund balance of over $5 million. I'll tell you that in one of the years, and I don't remember which one, Dave could probably tell us, after 2008, that was zero. So we've had years where the fund balance in the capital improvement fund
It was $72.
was zero, with a zero coverage ratio. And so having 5 million and a 0.32 coverage ratio is good, and it's good that we can do it in a time like this, because in hard times before, we haven't been able to do that.
Yes, I agree with that, Bobby, 100%, yeah.
So 2019 ended with 939,000, and in 2020, we've got the $10.4 million coming in, the $10.4 million transfer from the general fund. I was able to do 325,000 lottery money instead of 300. Land transfer tax, again, the great thing was up until the end of February, it was 17% up. So even with these bad projections, it's 4.6 million, which is only about $100,000 less than the prior year. And then sales tax, grand total from that, the restricted sales tax of about 4.3 million, and then the one-time transfer from the general fund of 3.4. Then we have debt service this year, which would have been in 16.2, but we've reduced that, or we will reduce that next Tuesday by 500,000 with the refunding. And looking at it ending, then pay-go projects, which is all the capital outlay and the capital improvements plan going out of 3.5 million, and ending up with a fund balance of 4.7 million in 2020, and that coverage is 0.30.
So we'll be at 4.7 on June 30th of this year.
Yes, sir.
And we will then transfer in next year from the general fund?
Right, but that number, that's really how we ended up balancing the general fund.
Yeah, I
because
remember. I
all the
thought it was like
capital
$1.3 million
So
or
that
something.
number's $8,478,000 instead of 10.4 million, it's 8.5 million. For
So
fiscal 20.
4.7 will increase by 8.5 to 13.2. I've moved into fiscal 2021. We ended this year at 4.7.
Oh, yeah,
Sorry.
sorry.
And then we were going to move money from the general fund or not
That
move
happens,
money.
that happens in 20.
20, so there's no movement in from, gotcha.
The one-time movement.
So 4.7, no increase from the general fund. Spending in the capital pay-go up above 583. That would get us to about 4.1, and then it increases about 900,000 to end the year at 5032. And the 900,000 of contribution is coming from
600,000 of reduced debt service from the refunding, 612,000. 50,000 from the lottery draw.
No, I think I understand. That's good, Dave. That's good. Thank you.
Other questions about the capital improvement plan? Okay, and the last document you have, and you just, because we could give it to you, is taking all that together. That document, the long document, is what the budget would look like, and absent changes by you all, when I come back to you on the 18th, that is the budget that I'll be presenting to you to modify, change, do whatever you want to with, and that we would then be sending out to public hearing on the first meeting of March. But this does it line by line, what we've just done in summary form. Any questions about that? All right, with that said, that's all that we have to give to you all. We've done what we believe our budget guidance was, and we've got a balanced budget that's a lower budget by $1 million or so than it was last year, a lower tax rate than we had last year, and again, and it still provides the services that the county needs to be providing. So that's where we are, and that's what we'll bring to you on the 18th.
Good work, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I think going into this, we knew it was going to be a no-growth situation, and that's what we've got, and it's painful. Do want to thank the department and heads because it was very prudent thinking going into this, and the pain is across, just a lot of pain with this, but I mean, that's the way it is. I'm proud of our people because, you know, they've taken ownership in this budget, and thank you.
Well, I'll have to reiterate, staff could not have been better, and staff could not have understood what was going on better, and staff could not have been more helpful. I mean, they got it, and they worked hard to help us get where we needed to be, and I can't tell you how much we appreciated that, but it took a lot of effort on there. They've done their budgets twice in 1 year, and that took some effort, and we appreciate it.
Good deal. Anyone else? Is that all you have?
That's all I have.
Okay. Good meeting.
Yep.
So you'll come back to us.
I'll be back at our board meeting on the 18th. We'll present this budget to you in the normal fashion where I give you the budget message. It'll include the budget ordinance, all that stuff that we do normally at budget time, we'll do on the 18th. you'll have another opportunity to ask questions or change or whatever. And then at the end of that meeting, we'll ask you to set the public hearing for our June 1st meeting.
Okay?
And then we'll have that public hearing, and then, assuming there's no other changes coming from that public hearing, then on the 15th of June, we'll bring it back to you at that meeting for adoption.
Very good. Thank you, Bobby. Thank you, Dave.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good work, guys. Thank you all, board.
Good double work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion. Second.
There's a motion by Commissioner Bateman to adjourn. It's been seconded by Commissioner House. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those like sign. Motion carried unanimous. Thank you.